The rain had been falling since dawn, washing the color out of the streets and turning the narrow alleys into glistening rivers of mud. Daniel had just left the small grocery store with a paper bag tucked under his arm, his other hand gripping an umbrella that had seen better years. He was a single father, known quietly in his neighborhood not because he sought attention, but because everyone knew the story of the man who raised his little boy alone after his wife died giving birth. Ethan was 6 now, a bright-eyed child with an old soul, and Daniel had built his routines around him with the precision and care of someone who had lost too much to take anything for granted. He didn't expect anything unusual that morning. He didn't expect to see her. She was sitting by the side of the road near the bus stop bench, her dress soaked and clinging to her frail frame. In her arms, wrapped in a thin blanket that was darkened by the rain, was an infant whose cries were muffled by the layers of cloth. Daniel walked past at first, thinking she was just another passerby caught in the unexpected storm. But something in the way she held the baby, something too desperate, too final, made him stop. The girl's lips trembled as she tried to hush the child, her fingers nearly blue from the cold. She couldn't have been more than 19. When Daniel stepped closer, she didn't even look up at him, as though she had already accepted that the world had no space left for her. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice steady but gentle. The girl blinked, slow and hollow, and when her eyes met his, he saw more than fear or exhaustion. He saw surrender. "Please," she whispered, not answering his question. Her voice cracked like glass. "I can't take care of her." Daniel's chest tightened. The baby let out a soft, pained whimper. He didn't know what to say, because there were no rehearsed answers for moments like this. "There's a shelter nearby," he said. "I can walk you there." She shook her head weakly. "No, no shelter. They'll take her away. They'll—" She swallowed hard, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "Please, you look like someone who wouldn't let her suffer." For a moment, Daniel didn't move. The rain drummed like fingertips over the umbrella. He began, but she cut him off. "I've watched you before," she said, her voice a bare thread. "You walk with your son every morning. You hold his hand, you fix his coat, you smile at him like the world doesn't break people. I thought, if I ever found you, maybe." She looked down at the baby again, then held her out only slightly, as though any sudden movement would shatter them both. Daniel felt something pull inside him, something heavy and unfamiliar. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mira," she breathed. "Her name is Lily." Daniel knelt slowly so he was closer to her level, shielding the baby under his umbrella. "Mira, you can't just give your child to a stranger." Her shoulders started to shake, not from cold but from something deeper. "You're not a stranger," she said through her tears. "You're a father. You're kind. I've seen it. I have no one, no money, no home, no food. She'll die with me." The baby stirred, a tiny fist pushing free of the blanket. Daniel saw the smallness of her, the fragility. She couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. He looked at Mira again, and for the first time, truly saw her, the bruises on her arms, the split in her lip that had only half healed, the way she flinched whenever a car passed by too fast. She wasn't abandoning her child out of selfishness, she was doing it out of a love so raw it hurt to witness. "Come with me," he said at last. "You and Lily both. I'm not taking your baby, but I'll help you. We'll figure something out." Something flickered in her eyes, hope, but faint and unsure, like a candle fighting the wind. She shook her head again, more desperate this time. "No, if I stay with her, they'll find us. Her father, he'll come. He said he would. He said he'd take her in." Her breath stuttered as panic broke through whatever strength she had left. Daniel's hand tightened on the umbrella handle. He didn't need every detail to understand enough. He placed the grocery bag on the bench and slowly reached out. "Mira, look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her eyes. "No one is taking her," he said. "Not like that. If someone hurt you, we can go to the police. I'll go with you, but don't disappear and leave her behind. You'll break yourself in a way you can't come back from." The rain eased into a mist, as though even the sky was listening. Myra's lips parted, but no words came out. Then, as if every nerve inside her snapped at once, she cradled Lily closer, kissed the baby's forehead, and held her out with trembling arms. "Please," she said again, voice barely sound. "You can protect her. I can't." Daniel took a long, steadying breath, his mind moving through memories he had buried and scars that still spoke in silence. He had not expected to love another child, not after losing his wife and nearly losing himself. But Ethan had taught him that love expanded in impossible ways, that hearts were strange, elastic things. He slowly placed one hand on Lily's back, feeling the rise and fall of her tiny breaths. But instead of taking her fully, he moved his other hand to Myra's shoulder. "I'm not leaving you here," he said. His voice had changed, firmer now, but gentle still. "Stand up. We're going somewhere warm. Then we'll talk." She hesitated only a second more before something inside her caved in. She nodded faintly. Daniel stood and helped her up. The blanket around Lily was soaked through, and he tucked the baby carefully under his coat. They walked in silence to his car, Mira limping slightly, favoring one leg. He noticed, but didn't comment yet. The car smelled faintly of pine and old cloth seats, the kind of scent that clung to years of early mornings and school drop-offs. Daniel laid the baby gently on the backseat, then handed Mira a dry towel from a bag he kept in the trunk. "Dry off a bit," he said. "She needs warmth. You both do." Mira sat stiffly in the passenger seat, towel pressed to her face, as though unsure she deserved even that small comfort. As they drove, she kept glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror, her eyes wet but fiercely protective. Daniel stopped by a pharmacy, ran inside, and came back with baby formula, wipes, a small hat, and a thicker blanket. Mira watched him, stunned silence surrounding her questions. They arrived at Daniel's house, a modest two-bedroom place with light blue shutters and a small porch lined with empty flower pots. Ethan had painted a wooden sign that hung by the door. It said, "Home is where Dad is," the letters crooked and proud. Mira froze at the welcome mat. "You have a son," she said quietly. "He's at school," Daniel replied. "You'll meet him later." Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave. She stood near the doorway, dripping onto the hardwood floor, unsure where to go or what to touch. Daniel took Lily to the couch and began peeling away the wet layers with the kind of care only someone familiar with fragile life possessed. He turned on the small fireplace and wrapped the baby in the new blanket, holding her gently while she squirmed and fussed. Mira watched him from a distance, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her damp hair clinging to her cheeks. "You don't have to keep me," she said in a low voice, as if bracing herself for rejection. "Just take care of her. That's all I'm asking. I'll leave tonight. I won't cause trouble, I promise." Daniel glanced at her, then back at the baby. He reached for the formula and bottle he'd bought, his movements steady and practiced. "What did you last eat?" he asked flatly. Mira blinked. I don't know. Yesterday, maybe the day before." Her legs wobbled slightly, and she caught herself on the arm of a chair. Daniel motioned toward the kitchen. "Sit," he said, "I'll make something." But she didn't move. "You don't understand," she said, panic creeping again into her tone. "If I stay, if anyone finds me here, no one is finding you today," Daniel said calmly. "Right now, you're safe. That's all that matters." She stared at him with a mixture of disbelief and confusion, as though kindness was a language she had forgotten how to speak. The kettle hissed softly in the kitchen, and soon the smell of warm soup began to drift through the room. Daniel fed Lily slowly, her tiny mouth wrapping around the bottle. She settled quickly, exhaustion overtaking her earlier cries. When the baby finally slept against a folded blanket on the couch, Daniel returned to the kitchen. He placed a bowl of soup and a piece of bread on the table. "Eat," he said without looking at her directly. Mira sat reluctantly, her fingers trembling as she lifted the spoon. The first taste brought tears she tried to hide. She ate slowly, each bite careful, like she feared it would be taken away. Daniel sat across from her, elbows on the table, hands clasped loosely. He didn't force her to talk. He simply waited. Minutes passed in silence except for the baby's soft breathing by the fire. Mira finally set the spoon down. "I ran away 2 months ago," she began, her voice tired and uneven. "He beat me when he found out I was pregnant. Said the baby wasn't his and that I was trash. I left in the middle of the night. I thought I could take care of her when she came, but I was wrong. I tried working. People don't hire girls who look like me, who don't have papers or homes or anything clean to wear. I begged. I slept in bus stations and doorways. Then she got sick one night and I thought she'd die. I swore if I found someone better than me, I'd give her away before that happened." Her breath shook as she spoke, every word costing her something unseen. Daniel listened quietly, his jaw tight. "You did the best you could with what you had," he said softly. "That doesn't sound like someone who doesn't care." Myra's eyes darted to the baby, then back to her hands. "I love her," she whispered. More than anything, that's why I have to let her go. Daniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. Loving her doesn't mean abandoning her. It means fighting for her in the right way. And you don't have to do it alone anymore. She shook her head, tears gathering again. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said. And I know what it's like to be left holding a life you didn't think you could protect. When my wife died, I thought I'd lose my son too because I couldn't do it without her. But I learned. I got help. People stepped in. Don't decide your limits based on fear. Mira looked at him then, fully, as though seeing something she had never allowed herself to imagine. Before she could speak, the sound of keys jingling at the front door cut through the quiet. Mira tensed immediately, hands gripping the edge of the table. The door swung open, and Ethan's voice filled the entryway before his small frame appeared. Dad, my teacher said I forgot my lunchbox but I told her you packed. He froze mid-sentence when he saw the girl at the table, her wet hair, and the bundled baby sleeping on the couch. He blinked, puzzled but not afraid. Daniel stood and gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder. This is Mira, he said. And that's Lily. They're staying with us for now. Ethan's eyes widened slightly in curiosity, not judgment. Is the baby hungry? I can share my snacks if she wants. Daniel offered a faint smile. She just ate. But thank you. Ethan stepped closer to the couch and peered at the baby with quiet fascination. Mira watched him, the innocence in his face almost startling to her. She looked at Daniel again, uncertainty and gratitude wrestling inside her. Hours passed, and the storm outside faded into a gray hush. Daniel brought fresh clothes for Mira, ones his late wife had boxed up years ago, kept for reasons he never explained to anyone. Mira changed in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. She hardly recognized the girl in dry clothes, the bruise on her cheek now only a shadow. When she emerged, the baby was awake again, eyes blinking at the world with the soft confusion of new life. Ethan sat cross-legged by the couch, showing Lily one of his stuffed animals and whispering stories only he knew. Myra's breath caught at the sight, her heart torn between relief and pain. Daniel approached her quietly. You don't have to decide anything today, he said. Just rest. Let Lily rest. We'll take everything one step at a time. She opened her mouth to protest, to remind him this wasn't his burden, but the words died before reaching her lips. The warmth of the room, the calm in his voice, the small boy talking gently to her child, it shook her more than the cold ever had. She sat on the edge of the couch and gathered Lily into her arms, her movements instinctive and tender despite the storm inside her. The baby nestled against her chest with a soft sigh, as if recognizing the heartbeat that had carried her through every silent mile of fear. Daniel stepped back to give her space, but he remained near enough to anchor the moment with his quiet presence. Ethan glanced up, his eyes bright with the curiosity of a child who didn't yet understand the weight of broken things. Can I hold her one day? He asked. Mira hesitated, then nodded faintly. She likes calm voices, she said, her tone almost apologetic, as though she needed to justify her own child's existence. Ethan grinned and returned to his stuffed bear, whispering promises of future stories. The hours that followed were quiet but full. Daniel made a small bed for Lily in a wicker basket padded with baby blankets he'd bought earlier. Ethan insisted on setting his own pillow beside it, just in case she needed company. Mira said little, but her eyes followed everything, Daniel washing bottles at the sink, Ethan lining up his crayons on the coffee table, the firelight flickering against the windows. It wasn't her home, but it was the first place in months that didn't feel like a doorway leading to another cold street. As night settled, the world outside turned black and reflective with leftover rain. Daniel made up the fold-out couch with fresh sheets and a quilt his mother had sewn decades ago. Mira stood nearby, holding Lily and chewing at her bottom lip. I can sleep on the floor, she said. Or a chair. I don't need all that. You need rest, he replied, smoothing the blanket. You'll think clearer in the morning. She didn't argue, but the tension in her shoulders didn't leave. When Lily drifted off again, Mira laid her carefully in the basket and lowered herself onto the couch. Daniel turned off the main lights, leaving only a warm lamp in the corner. Ethan had gone to bed, but not before saying goodnight to both of them as though they had always belonged there. Mira stared at the ceiling in the dimness. Thank you, she said quietly. Daniel paused at the doorway. You don't owe me thanks. Just sleep. But sleep didn't come easily. In the deep hours of the night, long after the house had stilled, Mira slipped barefoot into the living room. Daniel was there in the armchair, half awake, his head tilted back and a blanket draped over him. The fire had died down to embers, its glow pulsing faintly. She knelt beside the basket to check Lily, brushing a finger across the baby's cheek. The child stirred but didn't cry. Myra's breath turned uneven as a memory clawed at her chest, the night she had hidden in a bus station bathroom, huddled on the cold tile with Lily wrapped in her coat, whispering apologies into her tiny ear. For the first time since that night, the air didn't sting with fear. She looked at Daniel then. In the faint light, the lines on his face spoke of years of carrying weight with no expectation of reward. She wondered what kind of man stayed awake just to make sure strangers weren't swallowed by their nightmares. He opened his eyes without alarm, as if he had expected her to wander. She lowered her gaze, ashamed. "I was checking on her," she whispered. "I know," he said. "Do you want to sit?" She hesitated, then sat on the rug near the chair, hugging her knees. The quiet wrapped around them not as emptiness but as a fragile peace. After a minute, she asked the question that had been pressing against her ribs since morning. "If I left her here, would you really take care of her?" He didn't rush his answer. "Yes, but not by taking her from you. Only if you truly couldn't stay." Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to be what she needs." "Neither did I," he said. "No one does, not at first. You learn." She shook her head, tears slipping down before she could stop them. "You don't understand what kind of people will come looking if they find out where I am. I'm not safe. Staying means danger, for her, for you, for your son. And leaving her means tearing out part of yourself," he said gently. "Fear doesn't make your love worthless. It proves it." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, frustrated by the trembling in her voice. "If I stay and it all goes wrong, I'll never forgive myself. And if you run and spend the rest of your life wondering what she grew up believing about you." His voice was calm, not pushing, but unflinching. She stared into the dying embers. The thought had haunted her for weeks, Lily growing up thinking her mother hadn't loved her enough to fight. Daniel leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees. "There are ways to protect both of you. Legal ways. Safe ways. I can help with that. I know a lawyer from when I filed custody papers for Ethan after his grandparents tried to step in. She owes me a favor. You don't have to hand your child to a stranger on a sidewalk to save her." Mira closed her eyes. The weight of the past refused to let go so easily. "What if they find me before anything is done? Then they'll have to go through me," he said simply. "And I don't break easily." The certainty in his tone didn't sound like bravado. It sounded like someone who had lost and still stood up anyway. For the first time, something inside her eased. She leaned back against the couch, exhaustion settling deeper than before. "I don't know if I can stay forever," she murmured. "You don't have to decide forever tonight," he replied. "Just decide to stay until morning." She nodded weakly. Daniel stood and adjusted the blanket around her shoulders before returning to his chair. They didn't speak again, but the silence felt different now, not empty, but waiting. Morning came with pale sunlight slipping through the curtains. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and still. Mira woke to the sound of quiet footsteps and the clink of dishes in the kitchen. Lily was awake in the basket, chewing on a corner of the blanket and staring at the world with unfocused wonder. Ethan tiptoed over and sat cross-legged beside her, whispering something about showing her his drawing later. Mira sat up slowly, the blanket sliding into her lap. Her body ached from the weeks of sleeping upright and running from shadows, but for once, the ache didn't come with fear. Daniel appeared in the doorway, holding a mug of tea. He placed it gently on the side table. "You'll need a warm coat if you're going to the lawyer's office with me later. We'll get you one after breakfast." She blinked at him. "I never said I was going." "You haven't said you're leaving either," he replied. The simplest things filled the next few hours. Toast, eggs, Ethan telling Mira about his favorite cartoon, Daniel calling his lawyer and speaking in that steady tone that made everything sound possible. Mira fed Lily while sitting at the kitchen table, her hands steadier than the day before. When Lily fell asleep against her chest, she didn't tense in panic. She held her as though the world might finally give her a chance to breathe. Later, when Daniel stepped outside to warm up the car and Ethan ran to find his shoes, Mira stood in the living room, looking at the front door. The old fear flared again, a voice in her head telling her to run before she ruined everything. She looked down at Lily's sleeping face, at the tiny fingers curled in trust. The door was only a few feet away. Freedom, or what she had mistaken for it, waited beyond it. But so did the cold, and the hunger, and The hands that hurt. Behind her was uncertainty too, but it was the kind that could change shape into something livable. She walked to the baby basket and laid Lily gently inside. Her fingers lingered on the soft new blanket. She straightened, her breath shallow. Daniel came back inside, shaking rainwater from his coat even though the sky was clear now. He saw her standing there, fists clenched, eyes caught between fight and flight. "It's your choice," he said quietly. "But if you walk out, don't do it thinking you're doing what's best for her. Do it only if you truly believe you don't deserve to stay." Her eyes filled, not with panic but with something harder to name, grief for the life she'd imagined losing, and a fragile hope she was afraid to touch. She stepped away from the door and returned to the basket, sliding her arms beneath Lily and lifting her close. Daniel nodded, as though the decision needed no applause. Ethan came running in with mismatched socks and a grin. "Is she coming with us?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Mira adjusted Lily against her shoulder and met Daniel's gaze. "Only if you meant what you said last night," she whispered. "All of it, I did," he said. "Every word." She took a shaky breath. "Then I'll stay, at least until we know what to do next." "That's enough," he said. They left the house together, Daniel locking the door, Ethan skipping ahead on the walkway, Mira holding Lily with the kind of careful strength that didn't look like surrender anymore. The world outside hadn't changed. The rain still pooled in the gutters. People still hurried past with their own quiet battles. But something had shifted anyway. Sometimes salvation didn't come as a rescue in the night or a miracle at the last moment. Sometimes it came as a man with tired eyes who refused to let a broken girl walk away from the love she was born to give. And as the door closed behind them and the day unfolded, Mira realized she had not handed her child to a stranger. She had walked into a life that might one day feel like hers too.